It is the Final Word World Cup Daily, Day 23, Part 1. Adam Collins back with you. Daniel Norcross down the line. He's at Kensington Oval in Barbados, where the States of the United, no one ever calls it that. Why would they? The USA have played the Kingdom of the United as well. No, they've played England in a game of T20 cricket at the World Cup, and one side's won quickly. Tell us why. 30 seconds.
England won the toss, elected to bowl because that was their best way of sorting out their net run rate. And they sorted out their net run rate by bowling out the USA for 115, they lost 5 wickets for no runs, and most spectacularly, they lost 4 in 5 balls, including a hat-trick for CJ Chris Jordan on his home ground. And after that, it was a cakewalk. Jos Butter hitting multiple sixes, one onto the roof over opposite me, Worrell, Weeks and Walcott stand. It was amazing. England are through to the semi-finals. They've taken net run rate out of it, and somehow they're there, and South Africa may not be.
Yeah, I'll go back to where you started at the end. So let's go through the game. Particulars: England were set 116. They bowled out the USA in 18.5 overs. Top scoring for America was who did top score for them? It was
it was almost unnoticeable.
Yeah, I was going to say I have to go back to my card. Oh, Nitish Kumar, sorry, made 30 odd.
Correct.
And Corey Anderson one short of that. Then it was the CJ show, 4 for 10, 4 in 5 balls, a hat trick, a lovely moment. Which we will return to, I am sure, throughout our conversation. England knocked that off in 9.4 overs. Jos Butter, in a performance reminiscent of what he did to India at Adelaide a couple of years ago, 83 not out from 38 balls. Down the other end, Phil Salt was the passenger, really, 25 not out from 21. They have now taken net run rate out of the equation. As far as I can calculate it, Daniel, and I know you're rather obsessed with these things, it comes down to who wins, South Africa, Windies, right?
That's exactly right. And you get to this extraordinary situation where South Africa, playing their 7th game today, they could lose it by 1 run and be out of the tournament, having won 6 of their previous games. England, on the other hand, who looked sort of slightly outplayed against Scotland, certainly outplayed by Australia, and nearly won a game that they should have lost more comfortably against South Africa themselves. Saunter straight through into the semi-finals. And, I can't be 100% sure of this, but I think because they won in 9.4 overs, they might also, if they were really lucky, if the West Indies beat South Africa by a small margin, say in the last over, they could end up topping the group, which would mean they would avoid India and Guyana. And everyone wants to avoid India and Guyana, not because India is the best T20 side in the world, but because, let's be brutally frank, this World Cup, like many others, is arranged in such a way as to make it a little better for India than it is for their opponents. And so they knew always that they were going to be playing their semi-final in Guyana. And the advantage that gives them is that they were able to select a squad which is replete with spinners. They've got the 2 left-armers, Akshar Patel, they've got Ravindra Jadeja, and then they've got Kuldeep Yadav and Yuzi Chahal. So it's kind of a nice matchup for India to be in Guyana. Once they get to Bridgetown, it is what it is for either side, really. It doesn't really favour either side. India are always favoured because they've got Jasprit Bumrah and they've got a really, really good team. But in Guyana, they're even more favoured. So people would probably prefer not to play India in Guyana. And somehow England could yet finish top of the group. Now, what's more likely, let's be frank, is that South Africa beat the West Indies. That is the most likely result. But either way, England somehow, when they came into this, they needed to win in about 17.4 overs, absolutely to be certain. And they won in, as you say, 9.4. It was a murderous display. And I feel a bit for the US because we watched them a fair bit. You and I watched them out in the US. We saw them against Canada. The excitement of their victory in Pakistan against Pakistan. You were in the fan park. I was in the rain. It was just wonderful, kind of magical. And then they actually ran India really close. And then they ran South Africa really close. And there were lots of sort of, we've got this all wrong. USA's a really proper side. And I think we did get it wrong. But in the last 2 games, they have been absolutely thrashed. Whether that's the batting conditions, perhaps bring the power hitters more into the game. Perhaps it neuters their bowlers a little bit. That game against South Africa, if it hadn't been for Andries House, then they might have suffered a similar indignity, mightn't they? But it's 2 games in a row now against the West Indies, who won in 10.5 overs, and England winning in 9.4. And they just had no answer to it, I'm afraid. Their batting wasn't powerful enough once you get past the first few wickets. Corey Anderson has not, as Ravi Shastri would say, come to the party. And today, very much Chris Jordan and Jos Butler did. They came to that party, along with Adil Rashid. The 8 overs bowled by Rashid and Livingston, that kind of broke the innings.
Absolutely did. Just to round off on America perhaps first here. So Andres House, Aussie Goose, as we've been calling him throughout the tournament. It's the only time he's missed out. He's in the team of the tournament. I hope Netravalka's there too, even though he did get some of the treatment today, conceding 21 runs in 2 overs. But they've been a massive addition to what we've seen across the last 3 weeks, from opening night with Aaron Jones through to what they did against Pakistan, to holding their nerve when they needed to at the end of the group stage and not having their net run rate destroyed or anything like that, and really competing in the Super 8s. Yes, they get beaten badly today, and yes, they did in their second game, but most associates, when they reach this stage, the arse falls out before now. That's shown a fair bit, I think, and they could have easily won their first Super 8s game as well with a snifter of luck in that run chase against South Africa, wasn't it? So we bid farewell to them, but we will see them in 2 years' time because they made the Super 8s. They are automatic qualifiers for next time around, and that is a big fill-up. That's what, say, the Netherlands had this time. They didn't need to go through the rigorous competitive qualifying, remembering that a stack of great teams in associate land didn't make this tournament. But the USA will be there in South Africa and Namibia, isn't it, in 2 years' time? No, it's India and Bangladesh. India. My apologies. Or is it Sri Lanka? India and Sri Lanka. I should really know that.
Yeah, I think it's Sri Lanka.
Either way,
I think
India and Sri Lanka. No, it is. Jeff and I did discuss that on the weekly show. Now you mentioned them. So, so the USA are gone. But, back to the machinations and all the rest of it. My sense is that this is a feature, not a flaw of the system that we've got. We talked last week, Daniel, about not liking quarterfinals. At the end of a fairly exhaustive group stage, I like we've had the in-between step. There has been jeopardy the whole way through. Yeah, it sucks if you're South Africa in this situation. If the first game they lose is the one that sees them leave the tournament, that would be cruel. And there probably are ways of fixing that before next time. I haven't done the work on this as yet. It's not a fully formed thought, but I ponder whether net run rate progressing from stage 1 to stage 2, whether that maybe possibly helps with this a little bit, maybe a head-to-head type thing as well. But nevertheless, that is the way it ultimately boils down to in these types of tournaments. You get to a semi-final or a final. India won all of their games last year, and they were ram-raided in the final by Australia, and that was extremely funny. That was a feature of that tournament. And so it is this time that South Africa might miss out. So I don't mind the extra level of jeopardy because, in theory at least, you've got 3 games in stage 2 to protect yourself. And South Africa didn't make the most of their net run rate situation against America. You scale it back. Why are they in this parlous situation right now, excluding what happened in the group stage? They weren't able to dispatch South Africa the way that England were today. And that's going to be ultimately what costs them if they don't get the job done against the Windies later tonight.
Well, what it'll be is Safa on Safa violence, because it'll be all about Andries Goes. Yeah. Because it was his innings that dragged the USA close to the winning line. And, in some senses, you look back at it and go, well, that was futile, utterly pointless, because they needed 28 off 2. They got to needing 28 off 2, and then they didn't get over the line. But because they only lost by 17 runs, because of Andries Goes' splendid 80-odd, that could be what dumped South Africa out. Now, of course, it'll all be moot if South Africa win. And actually, as you say, it's a feature, not a flaw. I really like it because the second group stage, the Super 8 stage, almost every game actually feels really important. Like even today, the USA couldn't go through, but they were part of the narrative. So you still needed to watch the game. And that's what's lovely about a 3-game group, especially with net run rate. It just makes for all these permutations, and it makes people's eyeballs on it. And, the players should want that because they should want, if they can make an impression, if they can do something. Nitish Kumar played a couple of lovely shots. He's played some lovely shots throughout this tournament. He might caught the eye of people who want to get him into another franchise competition. Ali Khan with his speedy Yorkers, he's somebody that people might be thinking, he plays franchise cricket. Maybe he should play more of it. Netravalka.
Well, it gives them a bigger shot window. Yeah, what you're saying there, it means that, we've seen this with other teams. Afghanistan beating Australia last night isn't in a vacuum. It's not just because of what they've done in the national team. It's the skills they've been able to develop on the maligned T20 circuit. It's not always perfect, and Jeff and I, and you and others, often talk about the challenges of the proliferation of T20 domestic franchise cricket. But one of the pluses for players from countries that are on the way up is they do find their way into opportunities that otherwise wouldn't be there. In the case of America, their associate status as well, which also helps. So in some tournaments where you can only have a certain number of full members playing in it. So I agree with you that it won't be the benefits of what we've seen for America in the last few weeks, and they have been vast. They have been considerable. The way we've grown to both really regard and respect not only the team, but the way the American public who were willing to have a bit of a dip, they got plenty back the other way. I actually think this has been extremely successful on that front. In fact, I'm still getting around in my New York Islanders cap. You know what I mean? That's Long Island Mike. He's not someone who has been brought up following cricket. And what do you think this will do for the type of coverage he can put in the New York Post? It's not just him. It's not just inside the media tent. It's far beyond that. So, good on America for absolutely giving us a lot of entertainment, giving it their all. And I still think giving us the best moment of the World Cup when they chased down 196 on night one at Dallas.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. Just on the subject of the journos and whatnot, we're going to do a shout out to Greg from GQ, who GQ have sent a cricket guy over. Greg, we've called him. It turns out his name isn't Greg. Apparently, his real name's Roger, but he just feels like a Greg. I don't know whether it's something to do with like Succession or something. He's kind of tall and Greggy. Bless him, he's become a bit of a kind of local celebrity here because he's an American journalist, and cricket wasn't really his major bag, but he's watched a bit of it and he's got into it, and now he's become something of an expert.
Yeah,
and as magazines like GQ in the States start to have a cricket section, look, what they're doing is reflecting the demographic of the United States, which is changing. Those first generation Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis came into a country that had no interest in cricket whatsoever, and they had nowhere to ply their trade. And also, I imagine a lot of people wanted to fit in to American society. When you move to another country, and especially a country like America, you kind of want to integrate. Now they've got to second generation, and there's just more people who are more established within the United States, and there's more people to whom cricket caters. So, look, facilities are still going to be an issue. There aren't an enormous number of nets and training facilities, but this sort of thing, I still think that the way in and the way to really take cricket to America is through the women, because there are very few women's team sports in the United States. It's not like in England where you have hockey, netball, rugby, football. They have softball, basically, and a bit of basketball. There are a lot of very talented female athletes. They've got some great facilities and training programs in colleges for all sorts of sports. And with women's cricket being a little bit newer, the growth potential and the speed of growth that you could make happen in women's cricket in America, I think, is a bit more of a realistic goal than perhaps the men's team. But I say that, Major League Cricket is really taking off, and we've seen homegrown talent in the United States as well as, if you like, expats or people coming in from South Africa. I think there were 4 players in the squad born in the United States. So that's only going to grow. And I've got to say, I was massively skeptical. I know you were. I think both of us before we came out thought, what the hell are we doing? Why are we leaving the English summer to go to the States? That's not right. You don't go to the United States in the cricket season. But, I think I've really enjoyed it. I've had my mind turned and my eyes have wandered. I feel like I'm being wooed by a mistress.
I feel very, very much the same. Like I was pretty cynical about this whole thing, especially due to the administrative challenges America have had. Some experiences that you and I have had as well in the margins of that with our broadcasting work, that I just felt like, did they deserve this? Did American cricket deserve to have this crack? But they have made the absolute most of it. And you're right about the women. We saw Katika Kadali last year at Fairbreak. She's going to be a superstar. They get 1 or 2 players who are on the way through who they can invest in. Anything might be possible there. Daniel, we've got to talk about England a wee bit because we've diverted elsewhere so far. Jos, who came into this tournament having had a monster IPL, still at the peak of his powers. We saw sort of angry, chippy Josh before Josh. Some commentators still call him Josh. Josh before the first game of the tournament when he treated Henry Moran abysmally in that broadcast interview, and the press the same. And it struck us all as the kind of guy who might be not far away from losing his job. That was that kind of energy. Well, boy, oh boy, have they turned it around. He has been the standard bearer, 83 not out from 38 balls, 7 sixes, 5 in a row with a wide splice in there as well to help finish the game very, very early in the 9th over. I use that comparison point of what he did against India at Adelaide a couple of years ago, Daniel, a game you and I are both commentating. When Jos is like this, it is almost impossible to stop him. The challenge for him, can he extend it for 2 more games of cricket?
Well, I would like to think so, not because I'm English, but because watching him in full flight is one of the most beautiful things on a cricket field. He's just got such lovely hands. I mean, I start getting a bit dreamy when I think about those hands and go into a bit of a reverie. Not to mention those slightly haunted eyes as well. So the whole package is just sort of full of romance for me. But I think it's something about this England team that doesn't do clutter. And Butler is a classic example of someone who struggles with clutter. You look at his very best performances, it's when he knows exactly what needs to be done. And the problem with group stages for England is that there isn't really jeopardy until there's jeopardy. And they make their own jeopardy, you know.
Like the football team, like the men's football team, what they're doing in Europe right now.
Exactly. I mean, they could never do it the South African way, which is, win all those games and then go out. That wouldn't be an English way to do it. The English way to do it is to lose and lose and win and then worry about rain and then lose and then win and I'd be completely inconsistent in one sense. I mean, I say that actually. I think in the Super 8s they have developed a consistency. South Africa are a very fine team, and they should have won that game. There was 3 overs left to get 25. If Livingston hits the ball either side of deep square leg, then they've won the game comfortably. In that full toss down the throat of the fielder. So they are coming into a kind of form, but I do think that they're at their most effective when they don't have to think. And I don't know how that reflects. I don't know what that means about them as a team, but what I do know is that in the 2019 World Cup, the 22 World Cup, it was the point at which there's no choice. And then it all comes together. And that's a
there are some nice comparisons there, aren't there? Because in 2022, they had to beat Sri Lanka in that shocking game of cricket where they held on a shit heap. At Sydney, from memory, wasn't it? It just was not...
Yeah.
I say a shit heap. That's probably being unkind to the way the game played out. I quite enjoyed the lower scoring games at this tournament, but perhaps not quite so much a couple of years ago. And 19, absolutely. When they rocked up at Edgbaston for that India group game, it was, you need to win, whatever it is, 5 or 6 games on the trot to win the trophy. A little bit like Australia in 1999 when their men won the 50-over World Cup. And that can do wonders to galvanise a team. That word's a nice one, I reckon, uncluttered cricket. And they were that way today. They've got a side that now brings Chris Jordan back at the expense of Mark Wood. Jordan's clearly going nowhere. He was not a rogue pick, but I don't think he was a player that everyone anticipated being in the original squad when it was announced by Rob Key a couple of months ago. Well, a return today on his home ground. I say home ground, his original home ground there, a 4 for 10. Very special. The way he finished it off, using that breeze to perfection, hitting the stumps a couple of times, a leg before in there as well, bowling at the death, which has been his calling card for like a decade in this England team. And he seems to have found all his old tricks again right at the perfect time.
Yeah, he really has. I'm so delighted for him here as well because Gary Sobers was here. I mean, look, there's no point in pretending. Chris Jordan is a Bajan, and he's a proud Bajan with a lovely Bajan lilt. He's brought up here, he's friends with Rihanna. This is his home turf. And when he's playing at the Kensington Oval, he does a good job. I interviewed him after the game, and he does a good job of like trying to play down himself and, it's what the team's doing in England and all that. But you could tell the delight. I mean, it brought a lump to my throat on commentary because you could see he's here. His homecoming, and he's in front of the Warwick's and Walcott stand. I mean, I could give you now a Barbadian 11 that would win the World Cup from the names of stands here. Worrell, Walcott, Weeks, Greenwich and Haynes to open, Gary Sobers. I'm going to throw Conrad Hunt in. Sobers is going to have to bat at 7. Walcott's going to keep wicket. I've got the Hall and Griffith stand. I've got Garner and Marshall. Beat that team. Beat that team. That is Chris Jordan's legacy. His legacy is not Maurice Leyland and Wally Hammond and, Ken Barrington. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so you could see the delight on his face when he got the hat trick. And it was particularly lovely for me because we'd just received an email about half an hour before saying Chris Jordan is a lousy pick. He's going to get smashed around all over the place in the death. How come he's in the team? In fairness, it was from the same person who said the day before that Jofra Archer was rubbish. I'm starting to wonder if there might be, I don't know, some kind of link there. But he then picks up 4 and 5. And it was just one. It was really lovely to see, and I think England have now got their combinations right. I've said before, I love Mark Wood dearly. He's a beautiful man and he's a terrific test match bowler. But on these pitches where you do need variation, you do need guile, I don't think wanging it down at 90 miles an hour and hoping is the right way. And I do think that they needed another left-arm option in Sam Curran. So I think they finally reached the right team. And that's another part, isn't it, of World Cups, that you might not be 100% sure, but then when it comes to it, you get there in the end.
Yeah, there was a great piece about Tom Moody the other day, that exact idea that it sometimes takes a while through a group stage. And yes, when it comes to reading out correspondence on air, I don't know how many times I've told you, Daniel, to stay away from those feral Facebook groups, but you keep spending time in there. You keep reading along. To be honest, so do I as well. Adil Rashid, last thing I want to talk about very, very quickly. I'm mindful we should let you go to your next commitment. Adil Rashid, 2 for 13, 2 glorious googlies to get rid of Kumar. Then Aaron Jones, who we know can be a transformative figure in the American middle order. I don't think Adil Rashid's ever been better. I mean, I look forward to your response. My instincts, again, is watching him bowl through this tournament. He feels like the best version of Adil Rashid that we've ever seen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. He is at his absolute peak, and there's a sort of expectation that he's going to not be around much longer because of his age. Actually, I'm not sure about that. He's a T20 bowler. He doesn't have to bowl red ball stuff. He doesn't even have to bowl 50 over stuff because the next World Cup's not for another 3.5, 4 years. He might go, well, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to play T20. And we've seen how long, like Imran Tahir, can keep going. I don't see any reason why Adil Rashid can't continue like that. He's currently the 7th most prolific wicket taker in T20 international history. He's England's leading bowler. He's got 119 wickets. Interestingly enough, the top 7 are all still playing. Tim Southee, right at the very top, the likes of Mustafiza and Rashid Khan. And I think careers in T20 can be extended. So, look, England have got a diamond there, and you're right, he's bowling better than ever. And I'm quietly optimistic that he's going to keep on doing it for a while yet.
Wrist spinners win stuff. Okay, Daniel, let's take a break. On the other side for Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. We'll return with the Hall of Fame. Got Daniel Norcross with me. I'm Adam Collins. It's day 23, part 1. Part 2 comes up later when we will hear how this other group, it's called Group 2, isn't it? The Super 8 Group 2? I think that's right. The Windies, South Africa.
Even though they played
game.
First. Yep.
Okay, brace yourself. Hall of Fame. Uh-oh. Was someone's happiness and sense of self too closely aligned with a soccer team that's so conservative that even Jacob Rees-Mogg thinks they need to turn it down a notch? That's interesting. I'm not sure where this is going. Let's keep going. So conservative that Jacob Rees-Mogg needs to think that. I thought it was the other way with this football team. Yeah, I'll keep going. Well, football might not be coming home, but you can get a whole bunch of stuff that is like it in the Westfield London home corner. Oh, there we go. From the timeless Italian style of Natuzzi, the timeless British style of heels, you'll find so much style that transcends the slow, inevitable march of time in every store. And if watching England's footballing capitulation also feels slow and inevitable, then you might as well watch from a fancy Italian leather couch. Westfield London, buy a table and then go rock climbing. I don't know if I'm fully aligned with the script here. Maybe there's some subtext I'm not picking up. I also know that Sheehan really very, very much doesn't like the England football team. So that might be informing.
It sounds like it.
Informing where he's going there. I think it's our second name check of Jacob Rees-Mogg in the last week as well. But you know what to do. Westfield London, buy a table, go rock climbing in those brands we mentioned before, Heels and Natuzzi. That's quite a satisfying word to say. Daniel, it's for our most final word moment of the day. Give us something. Give me something. You were there.
Well, it's hard to look beyond a hat-trick or indeed a ball that's hit out of the ground 104 metres, a classic Jos Butter, a little bit like the one he hit at the rugby stand at Headingley.
That's right, I thought that. Yep.
It was very much like that. But what I'm going to choose is I'm going to choose the LBW in the hat-trick because I forget which American player it was, but it might have been Nostush Kenjigay.
It was Kenjigay, yeah.
Right. The only man on Facebook called Nostush, and he also has the nickname Nosh. I'm not going to say any more than that.
Hot tour.
But
that'll mean nothing to you, but it will to some people on the internet.
He was as out can be. He walked. He was halfway off when whoever's at the other end with him said, "Mate, you forget we got referrals and we're at 8 down. This makes 9, so we might as well." And he goes, "Oh, really? Okay." So it then just extends his humiliation as he sees how late he was on the ball on a big screen, blown up really big, the ball thudding into his pad. And when I say it was hitting the middle of middle stump, I mean literally the middle of middle stump. It was halfway from the top and halfway from the bottom, and it was right slap bang in the middle. It was beautiful, and I guess that was like I've seldom seen a ball strike the very middle of middle
You can see poor old Nosh was sort of like, I have to review this out of obligation, but I'm going to look silly in the process. I'm glad I know his nickname's Nosh now. I'm going to take more of an interest in him. Jos hitting the panels of the thing with the panels up the top of the roof that you mentioned before. That was amusing to me, that he hit it 105 metres. I think Ian Ward on comms was saying that he thinks that Jos is at his happiest hitting the ball at 80%, and that was one of those 80% hits where he just timed the absolute pants off it. Their next ball hit a 6 with one hand off the blade that went 89 metres. So that's the kind of form that Butler's in at the moment, all in front of one Garfield Sobers, who was enjoying himself up there. Always nice to see. The great man. Would love to see his stats as well. Right, I think that's it. I think that's us done. Daniel, thank you for your service today. We will doubtless hear from you. I'm not actually sure when you're on next, but it'll be soon.
I don't think it's this World Cup. Because I fly away tomorrow.
This is it. This is it. You're not doing the semis. Yeah. Well, you can come and watch the final with me. We're going to watch the final together at Westfield, London at 6s. We're going to have a listener event. Everyone should come. You don't need to tell me you're coming. It'll just be handy to know. We need to know how many, how much space to book there at 6s, and we can have some fun. Daniel will be a draw card. We'll have ourselves a cup of tea and an ice cream or something like that. Part 2 coming later today. I reckon that's Ben Jones, Hugh Laurie with Jeff Limon, as David Warner once called him. It'll all be for Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. England through to the Final Four. Good night.
Bye.